What is up, my friend? This is episode number 20, and I'm bringing you an author by the name of Jamal Javanji, who wrote this book called Living for a Living, and we're going to be talking about all things when it comes to manifesting your soul's purpose. It's going to be epic, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Anthony John Amix Podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is Anthony John Amix. My friends call me AJ. And my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show.
And we are back. Well, today I wanted to bring you on a bright mind and a life coach to answer some pretty important questions. Questions like, why are we here? Like, were we born to just strive? Like, just to make sure that the bills are paid, to take that occasional vacation and then retire for like a few short years to like just enjoy life towards the end of our lives. Like, I mean, is that what it truly means to live? Well, if you listen to this show, then you've probably been given the finger to that idea because you're like committed to living your version, freedom here and now, right? And maybe you're at this place where you started a business and you're kind of starting to wonder like, man, am I just simply here to work and make money with this business? Or is there a way to make money, be happy, and kind of wake up feeling on fire every day? Well, I have good news for you because Jamal has some answers about this. Now, before I bring on Jamal, I want to talk about something really quick because it's very relevant to this conversation of purpose. You see, I've found time and time again, many people, they don't go all in on their purpose because they don't actually fully trust and respect themselves enough to actually go out and create that experience that they feel called to. So I created free training that helps you to increase your levels of confidence and certainty in yourself so you can destroy those limiting beliefs and end self-sabotage. So you can go register for that and watch the training for free instantly over at trainingwithaj.com. Pretty simple URL, right? Trainingwithaj.com. I liked it. That was pretty good. I know that training will be a game changer for you because so many people have told me that it's really helped them put the finger on what was really keeping them from unlocking a new level of success in their lives. So make sure you go register and watch that training over at trainingwithaj.com because it will make the strategies and the philosophies that Jamal shares in this episode even more powerful. So with that being said, man, let's bring Jamal on to the show.
Dude, Jamal, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing, dude?
I'm great. It's an honor to be on your podcast. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. I heard that you have been down to my hood in the good old meth capital of America. And so how did you like it?
Where's that again?
In Maybank, Texas.
Maybe. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize it was the meth capital. Yeah, I've been to Maybank. I love it. I love Texas. I used to live in Dallas. I lived in Dallas a few years ago.
Awesome.
But yeah, went down to Maybank and that was a great experience. I loved the conference. I got to share some information at, and it was fantastic. Loved it.
Good. You got down.
I didn't realize you were from Maybank.
Yeah, dude. I am definitely from there. I'm actually from the town of Seven Points, which is on the other side of the lake. It's like the other side of the tracks, but the other side of the lake, right? and so I think when I grew up, there was 709 people. I'm pretty sure that was including the cattle. So it was a real small town, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was fun though. We had a great time.
Yeah.
All my friends loved coming over and like going fishing in the pond and shooting rabbits and squirrels and all that country stuff.
And that's your connection to Meg.
Yeah. In fact, my connection Meg is we dated in high school my senior year and freshman year of college, actually.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, I read on your website that you travel often. Are you traveling currently?
No, I'm actually living in the Southern California area.
Awesome.
I love to travel just as a hobby.
Okay.
And it's just something that's a part of my life. But I've done some extensive traveling, but right now I am in my abode, live in the mountains here in Southern California.
Awesome. And where's been your favorite place that you've been so far?
Probably France. I mean, France and then India would be second.
Nice.
But those are my two favorite places on the planet.
Haven't been to India yet. I'm very inclined to go. My wife's terrified. She's like, if we go, we're going to get sick from the food. Don't want to go. So That's pretty much the only reason we haven't been to India. Well, we've been to a lot of other places though.
Yeah, the food is the best part.
Yeah, I've heard that, man.
But I mean, it's definitely everything's very different. So it can be an overload sensory wise.
Sure.
When you first go, for sure. Man, yeah, but I love it. That's where my heritage is from originally.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Well, dude, today we're going to be taking a deep dive into what it takes to manifest your soul's purpose. But before we do that, I really want people to learn a little bit about your story. I've read it a little bit in your book, Living for a Living. And so I think a lot of people, I know they're going to listen to the show, right? They're going to listen to the wisdom that you're going to be sharing. And I think they may say, well, yeah, Jamal, it's easy for you, right? It's easy for you to embody your purpose and all of this stuff, but you don't know me. You don't know my situation. But I know for you, dude, life hasn't been fucking like rainbows and butterflies and cotton candy, right? Like you didn't come out into this world like knowing your purpose and just like be on a straight line. So let's give some people some contrast a little bit. So what has been your journey, man? Like what was life like before fully embodying your purpose? And now on the other side, what is it like totally waking up and embodying that purpose on a daily basis?
That's a great question. A lot of layers to it. In a nutshell, a core belief that I live by right now is that all things are possible. But the way I would classify the way I was raised to live and the way I viewed the world for most of my, adult life, to be honest, most of my adult life, was that only a few things are possible. And most things, especially things you really want, are impossible. That is how I was trained. That's how I was conditioned, not always consciously, but unconsciously I was conditioned to view the world, that the things you really want are not possible. So the things that you kind of don't want, you just have to settle for survival. But most things that you desire are impossible. And that's how I looked at the world. And I saw evidence for it everywhere. And it was a lot of suffering.
So tell me more about you said some of it was definitely conscious conditioning, but some was unconscious conditioning. Tell me more about what do you mean by some of it was unconscious conditioning?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, and myself included, that we're affected. When we're born into the world, I think sometimes we believe that we're just blank slates, and I've discovered that's not true. Yeah. We're not blank slates. We're affected. We've been affected by generationally, energetically, just from our families. The drama of our parents, we can't help it. It affects us deeply. I mean, we marinate in it in our mother's womb. So on my mother and my father's side are deep generational roots of poverty. Mm-hmm. And so my dad, he originally is from India. His family is from state of Gujarat in India, but they migrated. It was a British colony at the time. They migrated to Zanzibar, which is a part of East African country of Tanzania. And so, but that's where he was born and raised, in that island of Zanzibar, surrounded by poverty. In the standards of the society he grew up in, it wasn't entirely, he did okay. His family did okay because the end of the British system, the Indians kind of fared well, but nevertheless, surrounded by poverty, affected by poverty, mindsets of poverty. So my mom is from Ohio, grew up in a very economically depressed part of Ohio, southeastern Ohio, near West Virginia border. So just a lot of struggle. So on both sides, and of course they were pen pals. They wrote to each other for several years. That's how they actually, my dad proposed in a letter. They had never met.
Wow.
Out of a sense of a lot of insecurity. My dad, there was a revolution on the island. He had to get out of there. His family escaped to Kenya. He lived in Kenya for a while. Really difficult life. And so my dad, his ticket out of Africa was my mom. He had been writing to her for 6 years. And so he proposed in a letter, kind of a long shot. She accepted. And they ended up meeting. He had made his way over to the United States. But he took a lot of that baggage, a lot of that energy of uncertainty, of deep poverty with him when he came to the States. My mom, same thing, came out of a lot of poverty from southeastern Ohio. So you kind of marry all those cultures together, but with one theme of just lack. Life is difficult, limitation. That's what I was born into. That's kind of the theme of the house. And there was always anxiety about survival. It was just all about survival.
Thanks for sharing, man. I actually dove into this concept very deeply on episode number 4 when I talked about the different ways childhood trauma really impacts the growth of a business. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't talk about this, but this is the conversation. I'm glad we're having it, because this is the thing that moves the needle when it comes to increasing our level of freedom, purpose, money in the bank, in our life and our businesses, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand, like when we are born, there is subconscious impressions, the environment that we come out of, whether we're in hospitals, whether we're surrounded by bright lights and we're shocked, or we're pulled out with forceps, or whatever it is, or maybe it's peaceful and wonderful and the money is no problem with the parents. It's all being, like you said, like marinated deep within ourselves, deep within almost our DNA, kind of. But the good news is we can shift it. So here you were, growing up in this poverty mindset. So what were some of the impacts that it had, and how did you transition out of that?
It's a great question. Some of the impacts that it had was I felt I often gravitated towards a victim complex, feeling like, just being perpetually unempowered, and finding reasons why, I was angry, angry at circumstances, angry at situations that would happen. And so I would gravitate towards people who felt like a victim. I took on the energy of a victim. But it also developed into attachments to things that I perceived gave me a sense of certainty. And so, because I didn't feel safe, I didn't feel certain, it affected my beliefs on money.
Yeah.
I actually, it's kind of crazy, but I actually developed a real disdain for money. I hated it. I didn't like it because I saw the anxiety that the subject of money brought to my family. Sure. So I developed some real resistances to money, and this was not conscious, which caused me to struggle financially for a lot of my life. And I had no idea that it was coming from within me. I literally, the story I was telling myself was, it's the economy, it's blah, 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 all these other things. But I did not realize that I was just living out what I deeply believed and didn't know I believed, which was kind of crazy. So the transition, I gravitated to things that gave me certainty. I became very religious, became a typical evangelical Christian around 18 years old. And then I dove headfirst into, and then people said, you need to go into ministry. And I actually became a corrections officer before that. I was a corrections officer for almost 5 years. And then I ended up going off to seminary and Bible college and getting training in that. And then it becoming a pastor, and just dove into that for several years after that, into full-time ministry work. And I mean, looking back on that, I know this might sound kind of controversial depending on where you're coming from, but it was a drug for me. It masked this deep sense of powerlessness. And so I was looking, so a lot of these just being very certain when it comes to belief structures, and this is how God operates, how people operate, this is how the world works. I was looking for that sense of certainty. And if I did the right things, then I would be approved. I would feel like I'm accomplishing something great in the world. And all of those things were masking a lot of internal angst and just deep pain that I had no concept for, and no grid to process. So I was kind of on the run from myself, the way I like to put it. I was running from myself for a number of years until it all came crashing down. And so when I came face to face, I started to move into my heart space, which is where a lot of pain was. And I didn't realize that. Sure. At first, it was desire that led me into my heart space, but also in that same place was a lot of pain. And that just came to the surface. And when it came to the surface, a lot of things came unraveled. Went through divorce, lost, ended up stepping away from ministry, lost everything pretty much. And it was in that place where I started to, I was like, this can't continue. And I really lost the will to live. And I thought, well, what's the point? So I had to find a reason to move forward in life. And that's when I started to get clear about what was going on, within me, and what was causing my pain, what the source of that was. And realizing that I had the power the whole time within me to discover my life and move it forward. I had no idea, but I had to shed a lot of beliefs and get realize where my pain was coming from and clear it. So that was a process for sure.
Nice. And once you had that kind of, call it an awakening, I guess we'll call it, and then you went on a journey of totally peeling back the layers, looking at them objectively, which I feel like so many people are definitely afraid of doing. But I'll be the first to tell you, it's not as scary as your brain makes it out to be. It's actually, it's actually pretty fun. For me, I'm at a place in life where I'm like, ooh, insecurity. Let's dive into that as fast as humanly possible, as deep into the darkness, because I know there's some really good stuff on the other side of that, you know? So you went down that journey. What did you find on the other side? Like you found, you know, living for a living, because that's your book. So like, what did you find on the other side of this?
You know, in a nutshell, I found infinite possibilities.
Right.
That literally every desire I had, I became convinced that the desires that I had came inherent with the fulfillment. So within those desires was everything I needed to fulfill those desires. Because a lot of times most of my life, I was afraid to move into my desire because I had this deep unconscious belief that it's a setup for disappointment.
Yeah.
If you move into your desire, you will not be able to fulfill them because you lack the resources, whatever those may be.
Sure.
That was just a belief, unconscious belief. So I would stay away from the desire because the desire would cause pain. So what I realized on the flip side of this is that, oh my goodness, the desires that I have they weren't just something that I had to figure out or make them up.
Sure.
The desires that I have deep in within my being actually gave birth to me. They actually brought me into existence, which is kind of these are paramount to my essence. And I started to realize like, oh, and within those desires is everything I need to accomplish those desires. So really the key to unlocking whatever I may need to fulfill those desires is actually to move into them.
Awesome.
And that's what I discovered. Almost like it's too good to be true. That of course that's a belief as well. So,
Sure.
But that was is this really, like, can I really live this kind of life? And when I tell people this, they kind of look at it, they go, yeah, I don't really, you think you can just have everything you want? And the answer is like, well, why not?
Of course.
Why wouldn't we?
Of course. I'm kind of in this new phase of life. And I was telling one of our private clients the other day, what you want wants you, right? Like in the grand scheme, if we want to talk about consciousness, like the collective consciousness is saying, hey, I want this thing, right? And then you have this download of, okay, I think I should write this book, or I should do this talk, or I should do this coaching program, or I should launch whatever it is you want to launch. And ultimately that's it's being birthed in the grand scheme of things in the collective consciousness and God, so to speak. And so when we look at our desires and our purpose, it's a really empowering place to kind of be in this place of understanding at a very, very, very deep level, like in our soul, that what we want also wants us. It's a beautiful place to be, man. Yeah, so dude, let me ask you a question, dude. Why do you feel it's important for us to really know and to truly embody our purpose? And what does that even mean to you?
That's so good. Well, I tell you, when I was, to kind of go back a little bit, when I was at a very dark place in my life, and I actually I wanted to die, just to be completely honest. I really wanted to die. And if I had the resources, I felt like a failure even at that, because I felt like I can't even bring myself to kill myself. That's how low I was. But if I could, if I had a switch, I could just hit a button, I would have just done it. And in that period of deep darkness, I had this overwhelming desire, and I call it, the way I look at it, it's grace. I had this desire that I became aware of, to start doing research on people who have had near-death experiences, NDEs. And so I became obsessed with that. And I don't know why. I started to look into it. I would watch videos and testimonials of people. And there's a plethora of people since we've had breakthroughs in modern medical technology, when a lot of people have been resuscitated more than ever before. And there's a lot of people out there that have had these experiences that transcend belief systems or culture or socioeconomic backgrounds. And I started to look for the commonalities. What are the common themes I hear in all of these stories? And one of the things I heard was, and these people, no matter what they might have came into their life previous to the NDE was pretty, some of them were just totally agnostic, living kind of just purposeless lives, doing what everybody else does. And when they had these experiences, they became aware of an unconditional, overwhelming sense of love. And they became aware that there was a purpose to their life. They were told, was communicated to them, you have work that you're here to do, that you were actually You actually, in some ways, chose this life. And obviously for the discovery purposes, you don't know this when you're here in this
Sure.
in this body, but there is something you're here to learn. There's something you're here to do. There's work for you to do. You're not here aimlessly. And it wasn't always told to them what that was. It was just communicated to them that, oh, it's not time for you.
Yeah.
So they would come back, and they came back with an incredible sense of, my life matters. There's a real purpose here. And the work that we're here to do affects, and one lady actually put it this way. She was actually shown this vision of a globe, and everything that she did was kind of like this little light would go out, and it would hit at all these points all over the globe, and literally all those points all over the planet represented every human being that was alive. And what was communicated to her was, whether you know it or not, everything you do has an effect over this grid. It affects the entire grid. And it's imperative that you realize that what you do affects everybody,
So
whether
true,
you know
man.
it or not.
Yeah.
And that was very eye-opening to me to realize. And I knew this in my spirit. Like, if somebody would have asked me this, like, hey, are you here on purpose? I would have said, yeah, totally. I believe that everybody's here on purpose, but I didn't really feel that deep in my being until I started to do this research on these NDEs, and the people would come back, and the next question, they weren't really occupied with, I don't know what my purpose is. They just came back with, I have a purpose, and life is about discovering that.
Yeah.
So they lived their post NDE near death experience life on purpose. And it was the little things every day. They realized this is all part of it. And that gave me so much hope. It actually brought life back to me. And I realized, okay, the reason I'm not dead, the reason I'm still here is because I have work to do. And that work, if I do that work, I help everybody else get, it affects everybody else. But I firmly believe that each person is here to do a work, and that work benefits the whole planet. So if somebody's out of alignment, somebody's not actually in there operating in alignment with their true purpose, then the work that they're doing isn't in alignment with who they are. And therefore we all suffer.
Yeah.
So the key to ending, I believe, world suffering is to bring everybody back into alignment with what they're here to do.
Brilliant.
What they're here to learn, what they're here to do, because that's going to bring us into healing, because everybody is necessary. Everybody's work is absolutely vital. So it's personal to me. Like if I know somebody is out of alignment, it feels personal to me. Like I cannot allow that to continue. If I sense a direct role that I can help them with, I'm going to, because it's like, this is going to affect me. It's kind of selfish in that sense, but it's in a good way. Like we have a self-interest of everybody being whole.
So do you believe that pretty much the reason that we humans are here on Earth, like our purpose, is essentially to help one another remember that we're God?
Yes. So another way that I would put that is, I firmly believe the divine wants to. So how do you know anything? So it's like, how can somebody know what chocolate is like? For example, I mean, you can't read it in a book, and it's not information that you can know certain facts, or you can know what makes up chocolate with ingredients, the process of how it's made, but none of that will actually show you or tell you what chocolate really is like. You actually have to experience chocolate. So I really believe that we talk about God being all knowing. Well, what does that really mean? I used to picture God as some mainframe somewhere in the sky that has all these facts and figures, and it's just like this divine Google or something. But my understanding of that has shifted to, no, God is all knowing, because God experiences the essence of being through incarnation. And that's really us.
Yeah.
That's who we are. Yeah. We are literally God experiencing the divine.
Yeah. Another way to look at it is, you can't know chocolate without knowing a bitter lemon. Like, it's the contrast ultimately that allows you to know what anything is. You can't know light without dark, up without down, man, love without hate. It's the contrast that ultimately allows us to have a human experience, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that makes every day. So, just the little things, the life, experiencing the bliss of life, cup of coffee in the morning, just being with your spouse, enjoying a walk in nature, whatever it is, like just the essence of life. There's no mundane days. It's like there's no reason to have a mundane day.
So good.
With this understanding.
And I'm glad that you're talking about this NDE stuff and near-death experience. There's a great book I read many, many years ago by, I think it was an Indian lady named Anita Morijani. Name of the book was Dying to Be Me. That was the first book I'd read about an NDE. And it really helped me understand, I guess, consciousness, God, etc. But I also talked about this concept, but I didn't have an NDE, but it is very, very similar on episode number 5 when I talked about my psilocybin mushroom experience. That I used to help really facilitate a massive amount of healing from my birth trauma, not like my personal birth trauma, but the birth of my daughter. I talked about that. But there's a lot of similarities between, as you're just talking about this NDE and my mushroom experience, because there was like once it kicked in and I was breathing, I was very, very intentional in the process. It wasn't like a recreational thing. It was very ceremonial. And so during that place, the voice said, "Do you want to die?" And I was like, "Sure." I surrendered. So it said, "Breathe." And when I breathed, deep inhale in, deep inhale out, it just like took me completely out of my body to this place that was utter bliss. Just like everybody has described an NDE. If you research, read the books. I know you've done research, so I'm dialoguing with this about you specifically. It was just like that, man. Like time didn't exist, but yet everything existed all at the same time. Like Anita Morijani talked about, she was aware when she was dead, right? Dead. She was aware that her father was there. She was aware that the nurse was there. She remembers the conversations, but at the same time, her brother was in a totally different country, in a totally different time zone. And she was aware of him getting on the plane and the stress he was dealing with and all of these things, but they were all going on at once for her, but they were happening. It's kind of like a mind fuck on time a bit, but I get it, like, cause I experience it. And so, yeah, man, it's just interesting that you're bringing up the NDE. And even in that place, I feel like I was given my purpose, which was help people remember who they are, the soul in control. Right. And so it's awesome that we've kind of come to the same conclusions, just from totally different perspectives and paths, but it all is leading back into that essence line, which is a beautiful thing, man. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you. I love that. I love that story. And, I had the same sense when people experienced, and, when I was doing the research on other people's NDEs, I thought to myself, like, I almost kind of wanted one in the beginning. Like I need an NDE. And then I was like, no, I really don't need one.
Sure.
Because everybody's NDEs now become my own,
So
and I loved this. And of course, what you experienced is it's the same essence. You get in touch with source essence of who you are, and there's many different means to be able to connect with that, but totally that's beautiful.
So do you believe that we weren't born for a job, but we're here to work, I think is what the word that you use. So what do you mean by that we're here to work?
That's a good question. Well, I think like I said earlier, I love to travel. So I've traveled, a lot of places in the world. And what I'm struck with is that everybody's doing pretty much the same thing. All economies are driven by the need to survive, and people are desperate to put food on the table, to pay the bills, and to have a sense of security.
Sure.
And growing up, that resonates, because growing up, that was really the focus of my mom and dad. I watched my dad struggle. it was all about survival, all about and I remember, and I share this in the book, I remember being in, I think it was first grade or something. It was like a nursery rhyme. We were reading a story about the grasshopper and the ant.
Yeah.
And the idea of the grasshopper is kind of this party animal and just having fun and not really thinking about the winter. And then the ant, though, was diligently in the summer when food was plentiful, was saving up the food in the nest and preparing for the winter of scarcity and, that kind of thing. And so the ant, while everybody was having fun and enjoying life, the grasshopper's out there partying. The ant is just diligently working away, saving food. And then the winter comes and the grasshopper has no food and the ant has food. And then the grasshopper is begging from the ant, And I remember hearing that story, and it deeply disturbed me. And I had this sense of, wait, and I was asking the question, like, well, why does that disturb me? And it was, because that's my dad. I watched my dad. My dad's the ant. And my spirit was kind of revolting even at that young age. Like, because I had the questions like, is that it?
Sure.
Is that really what we're here to do? So we save up food in the summer and eat it in the winter. and then do the same thing all over again. It's this cycle of like meaninglessness. It just seemed like, so why am I here if it's like circular? I'm here to survive, and survival occupies my life. But what is the aim of life? It just seemed, it seemed like a joke, pretty like cruel. Like, well, we're just like these big animals running around here doing the same things that ants do.
Sure.
So I intrinsically thought there has to be a better use of my time and life's resources than just survival, but I didn't know what it was. And then, getting into the Christian world, and I would read so some of the most profound things, I believe. I mean, it's right there in the New Testament, but in Matthew chapter 6, for example, Jesus said he's addressing the root motivation of what governs our societies. Sure. And that is, he said, look, don't worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, because that's what everybody else does in the world. You don't have to worry about that. You seek first this, and he called the kingdom of God, sure, and everything you need will just come with that. And I was always intrigued by that. Like, what does that mean? Don't worry about what you're going to eat or what you're going to wear, because that's what everybody does. But then if that could be, so the idea is that, well, this kingdom, then of course there's other passages in the New Testament where Jesus would say the kingdom of heaven is within you. Yep. So if you seek first this place that's within you, everything you need will just kind of come to you. And it's right there in the Bible. But I would, in my church systems, in my, Bible colleges, I mean, none of this was taught. It was actually what was being put on us was, hey, your job as a man is to take care of your family, yep, which I don't disagree with that. But sure, at the same time, that just sounds like my dad. That just sounds like survival. That sounds like this big rat race. We're just here to survive. And I was like, that is not what I see Jesus talking about here. And so this idea of like, you can seek this internal place, which is where the kingdom is, and everything you need will be provided. It frees up so much resource. And what I've discovered is, if I'm not working for survival, I still have a desire to live a life of purpose and to do great things with my life. But if it's not for survival, what's it for? Yeah. And that opens up the possibility of, well, what if it could be for love and healing and service and the things which are the things that bring me the greatest amount of joy? If I could work for love, and then not for love, but from the motivation of love, from the motivation of what brings me the greatest desire. If my work can be connected to my greatest desires, not survival, but my greatest desires, which is to bring healing and love, because I really believe at the core of us, we are wired for love, sure, to give and to receive love. It's what we want. And if our work could be tied to love, not survival, how good of a life would that be? And I'm convinced now that is what our work is all about.
So good, dude. And I want to like unpack something, this word love for a second, because I'm afraid some people listen to this like, okay, Jamal, so we're here to love and service. So that means we're here just to give hugs, give kisses, and just love on people and make them feel good about themselves and serve people. Now, my experience, Jamal, love is sometimes that is love. But sometimes the most loving thing I can do sometimes is kick somebody in the face. And I'm not talking about physically with violence. Right? Jesus walked, just using Jesus as a model, he walked in the temple and threw over the money tables and shit like that. And I would consider that he was in love. He was serving as the pattern interrupt to bring truth, to bring wisdom and stand for his values, right?
Yes.
So I feel like sometimes when people hear love, service, especially when they're coming from a Christian background or any spiritual background, there's this fine line we get to walk where sometimes we get to call people out on stuff, and that's holding them accountable, and that is love, and that is service. And by the way, they may not like you for it, right? They may not talk to you anymore for a year or 2 years or 3 years, but if you are truly coming from a place of love, not talking about drama triangle stuff, or we're talking about you coming from a place of villain energy, which is the fuck you energy, or the victimized stories of the poor me story. I'm talking about love, where you see past their stories, you see their potential, and you're calling them up to this place of purpose, this place of potentiality, because you remember who you are, which is unlimited potential. You're seeing in them unlimited potential, and you're like, yo, you're better than this. Like, I'm holding you accountable. And I've seen time and time again, when I have my clients do this, my friends do this, I do this. sometimes people hate me for it, right? They don't like me. They're going to be in their drama. But if I'm truly coming from love, it may happen 6 months or sooner, or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. They'll usually come back and say, you know what? For the past 4 years or 5 years, I have hated you. I've despised you. What you said hurt me, but I've come to the realization that you were right. And thank you for calling me out on that. Right?
So good. Yeah.
That is love,
absolutely.
my friend. And lots of people don't talk about this.
No, I love what I think there was what I picked up on, a word that you said is a pattern interrupter.
Yes.
It has to be severe sometimes, because the patterns, we're so committed, because the pattern, I mean, this is, what we get into in coaching a lot is the pattern hasn't worked. So I was like, okay, the reason we're doing the work, the coaching work, is like, well, because the patterns haven't worked. So we want to, and they've agreed to this. Okay. I want to see the pattern. I want to interrupt the pattern, but we're so committed to the pattern because it gives us a sense of certainty. There's a familiarity that it brings. And when it's challenged, there's a real loss of identity.
Totally.
Because we've built ego identity around the pattern. So I totally agree with you. When you interrupt, and sometimes it's like when somebody's hysterical, sometimes you throw a glass of water in their face because they're like, hey, like, snap out of it, come back to your senses, because that's how, when you're in it, you can't get out of it without that jolt. It's kind of we flip the table over, so to speak, and to say, we got to interrupt this pattern. It's severe. And I do see Jesus doing that. And unfortunately, it's not fun. I mean, I don't enjoy.
I do. I love it.
I love the results of it personally, because it challenges my. There are times it can challenge my sense of well-being as well. Because when somebody's angry, because it makes people angry. But I have to come to the conclusion, like, I'm not here to be your friend in the moment. I'm actually here to interrupt the pattern. And you do have to interrupt the patterns. There's many ways to do it, but sometimes what's necessary is you have to be violent in that. And again, I'm not talking about physical violence kind of thing, or emotionally violent, but violent in the getting the attention of interrupting the pattern is so important. I'm really glad you mentioned that as well.
Awesome, dude. What do you feel is keeping a lot of people from discovering and embodying their purpose? Is it as simple as the 6 essential human needs that you see, that you found, that are unconsciously driving a lot of people? Are those the things that are keeping people from really embodying their purpose?
I think honestly, it's the victim paradigm. I honestly believe that is what I have discovered in my work, is that the victim paradigm, people are very committed to it, because it does bring about, there's a sense of comfort, a false sense of comfort. It's an illusion, but there is a sense of comfort in it, because if I am powerful beyond measure, if that's true, then I can't tolerate anything less than a powerful life.
Sure.
And I think people are terrified of their power. I think it's easier sometimes in the moment to say, the reason I can't live the life I desire is because of blah, blah, blah out there. It's the economy, it's political situation, it's my family, it's all of those things. And all of those things may have an effect on you. I'm not denying those things.
Sure.
But if we can blame those folks, those situations, then it kind of lets us off the hook a little bit. And we can be angry at the injustice that we have experienced. And I think people are afraid that when they acknowledge that my suffering, and again, pain is a part of life. There are things beyond our control that happen to us. It's like, I always like to put it this way: you stub your toe and it will hurt for a moment, but it leaves. That's the nature of pain. It doesn't last forever. It comes in waves. And it's temporary. But if I make a meaning over that, if I say, well, I stubbed my toe, and see, this is me, that's my life, I can't even walk across the floor, I can't, if I make some meaning about that, then now I'm suffering. And the suffering is, so when we acknowledge pain is a part of life, but suffering is totally optional. So if you're suffering, it's because you're choosing it. That's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow, and it challenges our fundamental way we view the universe. So who's in control? Who's creating this world? We've been taught that that's all somebody else.
Sure.
And when we realize that's not the case, then that's then it can feel like a heavy responsibility. And I think people are afraid of that.
Totally.
Responsibility.
Gay Hendricks wrote a great book. It's called The Big Leap. It's all about making the jump from a good life to a great life. And a lot of it is coming from victim consciousness, what I call like phase 2 of life, into the third phase of life, which is life happens by me. There's another phase of life, which is life happens through me. I feel like I kind of dance between phase 3 and phase 4. And kind of my purpose is learning how to spend more and more of my time in life flowing through me in phase 4, right? And so a lot of people, unfortunately, when they're in victim consciousness in phase 2 of life, right? Life happens to me. They're growing up in their condition. We're all here. We want to seek love. We want to feel love. We want to feel accepted, seen, all of that stuff, security. Unfortunately, for some people, their version of how good can they stand it is victim consciousness, because in that environment, in their conditioning, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, that's the only way they know how to receive love, which is poor me. It's the husband's fault or the wife's fault or my sister's, the government's or the church or whatever, right? And then somebody comes in a hero role and says, oh, it's okay, it's going to be okay. And they received what they wanted, which was acceptance, which was love, right?
So powerful.
And if they only know that spectrum of how good it can be for them, they don't realize there's a whole other spectrum where you get to learn how to self-source your joy, your acceptance without needing anything from anybody. Somebody could be punching you in the face and you could breathe and be here and just be like, I'm good. I mean, again, coming back to Jesus, I've studied a lot of ancient religions and philosophies, and I always come back to Jesus as one of the greatest models for love and purpose. He got the shit beat out of him, hung on a cross, bled, and still was able to source like peace. To source surrender.
So good.
Right? So good. So it's a beautiful model for us to be like, if that guy can go through that experience, and I truly believe maybe potentially this is where I'm at currently, maybe that changes in the future. I'm always evolving and growing. I feel like Jesus, his purpose was showing us what true unconditional love was, right? And modeled that to a T. Even looking at relationships, if I look at Jesus's relationships, and again, I don't know all of them. I only know what's written in the Bible. There's probably a lot of other things that I don't know possibly, right? But if I am just looking at scripture, he didn't seem like there was any drama in relationships. No drama, right? He never heroed anybody. He never said, poor me. And he really didn't even say, fuck you to anybody either, right? Even when he was overturning the tables, I don't think it was from the victim, the villain energy of the fuck you. It was just, this is not right. I'm expressing my anger, but you guys are still free to do whatever you want to do, right? There was still no drama. He's still in unconditional love. You get to still have your own experience, right? And he let everybody have their own experience, whether they repented or didn't repent, whatever, it doesn't matter. He was just modeling unconditional love, true purpose. I don't even know where I was going with that, but I felt really encouraged to say that. So I'm going to come back here, man, to what are the 6 essential human needs that you feel like are unconsciously driving people? Since here we are talking about victim consciousness and being in a place of an empowered life. So what are these things that are driving people?
That's a good question. Well, I think first and foremost, and a lot of this has been championed by, I'm sure you heard Tony Robbins and all of those folks, but this is a lot of research been done. And again, it kind of correlates with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, very similar to this. But the idea is when you come into the world, and this is first thing, even with the birthing process, there's a real need. So when you're a baby in the womb, there's a sense of warmth and safety and comfort, and then all of a sudden that is disrupted without warning. A baby obviously has no grid, no ability to process what is happening here. There's new sights and sounds and sensory overload, and and then of course that sense of connection with mother is disrupted. So we come into the world with a basic sense of we need to feel safe, which is what we call certainty. There's just a base level, and a lot of times we get older, we then attach certainty to many different things. Sometimes it can be beliefs give me certainty, so that's where dogmatism and religious fanaticism can come from. Or sometimes certainty comes from relationships, and our society teaches us that certainty comes from money. But ultimately, certainty is an energy. It's a sense. It's actually, so a baby can feel all of those things and have none of them. Have no beliefs. There's no beliefs. A baby can feel very certain. A baby can feel very loved. A baby can feel very safe. And, all of this is a state of being. So first and foremost, we need to feel certainty. And that's the basic human need, and that never changes. If, again, we're having this conversation here, but if we felt like a bomb was going to fall on us, or the room was going to fall apart, and someone's going to come in to rob us or something, we wouldn't feel that safety in order to have this conversation. So we need to have that sense of certainty to be able to function and do our work in the world. So certainty is the first human need. The second one is the opposite of it, which is a sense of it's a sense of freedom and expansion. It's been labeled uncertainty, but not uncertainty in the sense of a lack of certainty. It's just a sense of expansion,
a variety almost.
Yeah, like if life was very predictable and rote and routine, then we would lose the zeal for life. So it's a sense of newness and expansion and freedom. So that's just as important as certainty. So it's uncertainty, and then the third one is significance, which is just a knowing that my life matters. I have purpose, a meaning. Life is like, it matters that I'm here, and the work that I'm doing is very important. That's a sense of significance. Fourth one's love and connection. It's a sense of just that we belong, that we're deeply connected. Everything we learn, we couldn't speak, we couldn't walk, we couldn't do anything without mimicking, or like we learn everything through other people. So we're not standalone units. So we're designed to be with other people and live life in connection with other people. So it's a deep sense of love and connection. Fifth one is growth. And then the sixth one is contribution. So the fifth and the sixth they're more overtly outward,
Totally.
Growing and contributing. But really the first four I look at as operating system beliefs. So it's kind of like, these are your basic. This is what, like, a computer has a basic operating system that lets it function. In the same way, certainty and uncertainty, significance and love and connection are like our operating system of, and when there's trauma in one of those areas, or more, life stops to function well. And then there's inflammation that can come in, just like in the body. When you have an injury or some kind of disease, there's inflammation that is a byproduct of that. And that is for diverting resources to, like, say, hey, we got a problem here, let's look at this. It's the same thing. So when there's trauma in one of the four human needs, first four, there'll be inflammation in that area, which means it becomes inflated, and then it doesn't work well with the others. So if you have a need for certainty, then that means you don't feel safe, then you will divert all your resources to feeling safe in a way that runs over some of these other human needs that we also need. So I knew, I've done work with folks that their need for certainty is so great that it keeps them from relationships, which can seem very uncertain. Keeps them from a lot of other things. So it's mitigating the trauma in those areas to reduce the inflammation, so that life begins to flow. So when a person says, I feel good in life, it's not because they don't have challenges, or it's not because they're not growing. It's not because of any of that. Everybody, you can have problems, you can have challenges, you can be experiencing lots of difficult things in your life. But if there's a sense of movement and flow in these predominantly the first four, but really all six, if there's flow in these six areas, you feel good about your life.
You feel on purpose. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome, dude. What do you feel like is the first step discovering our true life's purpose?
That's a good question. I think it's to become hyper aware of you, to become really aware of yourself. And that may sound kind of like, oh, yeah, what does that even mean? Honestly, I believe most people are on the run. They're looking for themselves out there. Yeah. So that's why, the drive for a lot of relationships, the drive for career, the drive for a lot of things, it's because they want to find that essence. But really, you won't find it out there. You literally have to come home to awareness of yourself. And a lot of people one of the things that we are afraid of is abandonment. We're afraid of loss and of not being good enough, and which would ultimately mean abandonment. But abandonment starts first and foremost in your own being.
Yeah.
So it repeats out there in the world, but if that's where we're living from internally, then it's going to repeat out there. So people wonder, why do people keep leaving me? Why do I keep losing these jobs? Why does this pattern keep continuing? It's because, okay, it's trying to show you what's going on internally. So I would ask the question of, where do you keep leaving yourself? So the first discovery would be, let's come back to you. Let's come back to an awareness of yourself. So part of that, I mean, I think there's modalities that you can learn to help you do that. One of which would be, I'm a big fan of breathing, meditation work, because, and again, that can challenge a lot of paradigms. Like, what is that doing? What is that going to do? What is breathing going to do? It's interesting that one of my favorite passages from the Bible, Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am." I don't even like to say God, because what is the name of God?
Exactly. I have it tattooed on my body.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, that's right here on my arm. I am that I am.
I love it. But I find it fascinating that you can't say the name of the divine without claiming you have to say it first person. I am.
Yeah.
So be still, know that I am.
Yeah.
I am that I am. And how do you say that? And so true knowledge of the divine, you're not going to read it in a book, and no one can really give it to you. But the only way you really have knowledge of the divine is by being able to say, I am.
Yeah.
But how can you say I am? You have to become aware of you.
Yeah. So good, man.
Yeah. I think that's a simplified way of saying that's how it starts.
And I believe it was, maybe it's Elijah, maybe I'm getting my prophets mixed up, and if I am, correct me. So when, there was the storm, and there's the earthquake, and there's all this chaos, and he was, looking for God's voice, and God showed up as the small, gentle whisper, you know what I mean? And I think this is just another great illustration of being in that space. I call it being in the pocket, and admitting the truth. Sometimes for looking for an answer, it's like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? Is sometimes we have to align with the truth, which is 3 words that every high achiever very rarely admits: I don't know. And you'll usually find answers the faster you'll admit, I don't know, and be with that truth. Jesus talks about the truth will set you free. The truth is like, fuck, I'm looking over there. It's not out there. I don't know the answer, damn it. I don't know the answer. And to be okay with it, I don't know. And I use this analogy, this illustration at a lot of my events, a lot of my coaching that I do. Is like, how do you catch a butterfly? And I ask this question to a lot of people, and it's so funny. I like messing with high achievers because they're hilarious. They're like, I get a really big net, and I would just run through the field, and I'd be catching them. And I'm like, cool. How many hours a week you working right now? They're like, 80. And I'm like, yeah, no wonder. Okay, let me help you out here. Let me help you out. They're like, well, what would you do? I'm like, I would walk into the field with you. I would watch you sweating as you're throwing around this big net. And I'm like, you poor soul. And I would sit down, and the butterfly would come to me and land on my finger. They're like, damn it, you're right. I'm like, yeah, I know. And this is the pattern, right? That so many people are trying to discover the purpose, because like you said, they're looking out there, they're running, they're producing, it's out there, it's in the next thing I create, rather than coming, as you called it, home. Yeah. To be still and know that I am God. And to align with the truth that I don't know my purpose right now. I'm very unhappy, I'm very unfulfilled, and whatever the consequences are in someone's life, it's okay to admit the truth, because the truth will set you free. And once you can be with that truth and open up to the possibility of, and get into this childlike curiosity that we had when we were a child, we can be like, well, what could my purpose be? What would be fulfilling to me? That ultimately that is probably the path to remembering who we are and creating from that essence. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. You said, I love that. I absolutely love that. How do you catch a butterfly? That is golden. What a brilliant way to put that. How do you catch a butterfly? Yeah, and I can see the myriad of responses. I'd get a net, I go chase. But really, yes, you don't catch a butterfly. It comes to you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That is it. That's it.
Yeah, and if you do catch the butterfly with a net, you usually destroy it and kill it in the process. Yeah. So it's
it's delicate.
Exactly.
Yeah, which brings up attachment and
exactly self-sabotage and trauma and patterns, all the good stuff.
That is fantastic. I really love that analogy. Yeah, brilliant, so dude. Good.
So dude, a lot of high achievers, they believe that working hard, and this is relevant to the butterfly, right? They believe that working hard is the path to really finding fulfillment. And I'm not against effort by any means, right? But it's like they believe if they work hard, right? If they put some money in the bank, then they're going to have time to really find their purpose. Now, you believe that the system of working hard actually leads people down a path of poverty and perpetual struggle. So why do you believe this?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Well, I think so. There's a few, and I actually in the book I talk about this. It's there's a belief. I really honestly believe there's a law of the universe that it's the law of the least resistance, that I think is really important, because that's where abundance is found, in the least resistant path. But we are trained that you got to hustle. You got to work really, really hard. And it's just a belief, because totally. And my dad, money doesn't grow on trees, and you got to work really hard just to make it. And I began to see people, though, that would kind of defy that. They didn't work very hard, and they were doing really well financially. What about them? Of course, then the victim paradigm speaks and says, well, that's because they inherit blah blah, whatever.
Sure.
But there are many exceptions to this quote unquote rule that you got to hustle. A lot of people out there are not hustling and doing just fine. So the idea is, the reason I think that the hard work ethic, the hustle ethic, whatever you want to call it, leads to poverty, is because, first of all, a lot of folks, and this is probably not everybody, but a lot of people don't feel that they deserve. There's a deep sense of, I don't deserve. I haven't done anything to merit life. Survival. So there's a sense of, I got to earn this. So and again, that philosophy, you don't get, so I always ask, well, when have you earned it though? When do you do? What's that marker? Because you never get there, no matter how much so it's a self-defeating belief system. But a lot of people feel like, I need to, I can relax a little bit and enjoy, abundance, or enjoy my life once I put in the work. Now I can say I put in the work for this. But we wouldn't do that to a baby. Like when you have a child, you don't say, well, don't feed that baby just yet.
It's crying too much. It cried all day today. Don't feed it.
Right. Yeah, don't feed it. Or the baby needs to show some level of, like, hey, there's no free lunch here, So like you gotta prove yourself.
Sure.
That's ridiculous, obviously, but we develop these ideas of unworthiness along the way. So the hard work ethic can be a way to try to, it's actually a reaction to a deep sense of unworthiness, and a deep sense of unworthiness will not produce anything good, ultimately, long term. So that's an important, it's one of the reasons I believe that the hard work ethic can mask that deep sense of unworthiness.
Yeah.
I think another thing,
go ahead.
Oh, another thing that can be problematic with the hard work ethic is that the more you're just in the rat race, and you're hustling, and you're trying to make ends meet, and you're trying to get to this place, you're not present. So obviously, not being present, you're missing really everything that, whatever the future is, which I don't even think exists, but whatever it is in the mind, how we perceive time. I always like to put this way: the future is simply the unfolding of the present. But if you're not present for the present, then whatever future you're going to create is not going to be what you want. So there's a deep sense of, trying to, and it can produce in the short term monetary wealth. It can produce, you can store. I know people that do this all the time. But you don't actually feel abundant because there's a fear behind it. And typically what you fear tends to manifest. So absolutely. I know so many folks that they may become millionaires, billionaires, they end up losing it, or they die, and it goes to people who didn't work for it. And so it's a self-defeating prophecy in that sense. The other thing that it can do is it can also produce discouragement, because a person who feels that they must, it's the grind, it's the hard work ethic. It works for some people in the sense that you can play by those rules and get ahead. For other people, it doesn't work. So they feel like they're on the losing end of this. And then they become discouraged, which then leads to, my philosophy is I don't believe there are lazy people. No, lazy people don't exist. There are people who are uninspired. There are people who have given up.
Yeah. So good.
And I think there's a lot of folks that say, I can't hit this standard. It's just too high. I'm done. And that leads to poverty as well. So it's just an all around self-defeating system of belief.
So good, man. Ultimately. And I'm glad that you brought up different people. Like some people So let me kind of anchor this. So in episode 2, I brought on my good friend Jeremy Eugene Wilson. We talked about human design, and human design is the soul science that really allows you to understand how you're biologically wired for processing thoughts, emotions, whether it's your own emotions or you're literally sucking in emotions from your environment. And so people like me, we have an open heart center, and the heart center is where we store willpower. And so when you have an undefined heart center, like myself, I cannot sustain my own willpower. I can suck it. Like if I'm with somebody who has a defined heart center, I can suck in I can feel the pressure from their drive, and I can ride it with them, and I can produce very quickly. But for me, I can produce because I'm a generator. There's 4 types of humans. So I'm a generator. So I have the energy, and I source like a generator, right? I source my own energy, and I'm designed to wake up every day and expend all of that creative energy. But once it's done, I'm done, right? And so with the Open Heart Center, if I look at somebody outside of me and I try to model their success for the hustle and grind, and maybe it's working for them, what I don't know is maybe they have a defined heart center. And so for them, they can do the same thing. They can eat meat, chicken and broccoli and rice every single day for a whole year, and they can have a 6-pack of abs. And for me, I can do it maybe for 6 weeks, and then for whatever reason, I self-sabotage, and I'm like, why can't I be like that guy? But I'm just not designed to be that way. I'm designed to totally have variety, and I can do that for 6 weeks, and then I can set a new target for 6 weeks, and I can still get 6-pack abs, don't get me wrong. So I have them right now, but my way about doing it and creating that result is vastly different than that sustained drive and just plowing through. And for many years, dude, I self-sabotaged because I was like, why am I not like those guys? I'm not a man unless I can do that. You know what I mean? So it's very, very intelligent if we can have the awareness to understand how we are designed to thrive. Yeah, so good.
That's so good. So good.
So dude, I want to talk about I have a couple more questions for you. So number one is, you talked about poverty mindset, but how do we transition from this place of surviving to thriving? I mean, does it have to deal with our beliefs about money?
It can, for sure. I think that's part of it. I think the first thing that's paramount when a person is under a tremendous amount of financial stress, so they're feeling the weight of lack of resources, lots of bills, and they want to know, okay, how do I get out of this? How do I spiral out of this? And it may sound crazy. It's counterintuitive, but I always tell people, well, I've heard somebody put it this way: pain minus acceptance equals suffering.
Yeah.
So, so the key is, number one, accepting, okay, I'm struggling here. And so, but the number one goal would be, I got to get out of fight or flight mode, because when people are under stress, your operating system is stressed, you're in fight or flight. I'm trying to survive. And so the fight or flight mode is really a destructive, I'm convinced we're not meant to live from that place. It's evolutionary. It's been programmed into our body for survival, so that we don't get eaten by some prehistoric animal or whatever, or we're in a very difficult situation where our life depends on getting out of it. That's for very short, brief bursts of time. It's not meant to live in that, because of the hormones that secretes, and it diverts attention away from the creative process. So it actually diverts attention away from our pure awareness. So I may not know the solution. Sometimes people will come and say, this is my situation. Let me tell you what's going on. And they'll lay out all their bills. They lay out their limitations and what's going on. And they're like, can you help me with this? And I'm like, no, I really can't. I don't know. Again, I don't know how to help you with this, but I don't need to know, because you already know. And of course that always throws them for a loop, because they're like, well, no, I don't know. That's why I'm coming to you. I'm like, no, you're coming to me because you've lost access to you.
Yeah.
But if we can get access back to you, you will discover this. Trust me, because you are your greatest resource, and the wellspring of creativity. It's going to take creativity to solve these problems, and it's not going to be a canned response. It's going to be very creative, and it's going to be inspired, and all of these things. But the only way to get to that creativity and inspiration is you have to get out of fight or flight mode, because you're stressed right now. So, and you can focus on the problem. The more you focus on the problem, the more stressed you're going to be. So my goal as a coach in that moment is to say, let's get them out of that state. Let's get them in that place of rest. And because that's when we're going to get access again to inspired thoughts, creativity, and it without fail always works. So, and that's where I'll recommend, okay, the first step to moving into a place of abundance from a place of lack is to get out of stress, fight or flight mode, and begin to come to these places of rest.
Awesome.
And there's ways to do that. Yeah. And that's counterintuitive because it feels like, well, that's not solving my problem, but it actually is.
Totally. It's ultimately just helping them slow down to go fast, right?
Yes.
In your book, Living for Living, you talk about seeing Jesus as the embodiment of a new way to life. And that's really the key to living an abundant life. Now, I believe what you say when you say, seeing Jesus, you're not talking about putting him on a pedestal and like worshiping him or seeing yourself as less than him or this unworthy sinner. I don't think that's what you mean. So what do you mean by seeing Jesus is the key to living an abundant life?
That's a great question. My personal belief is that Christianity has made a gross error. And one of the things they did is they made Jesus the idol.
Yeah.
And that, and I think sometimes even people are like, what do you mean? Can Jesus be an idol? I do. I think Jesus can be a very unhelpful idol because I don't believe Jesus came to start a religion or to start, we project a lot of ego onto Jesus, like in the sense of Jesus wants fans and he wants followers in the guru sense of the word, but I think what the aim of Jesus is to be the embodiment of a way of being. And so, if we're embodying Jesus' way of being, then the focus isn't really on Jesus.
Yeah.
The focus is on this new way, which is interesting that the earliest Christians were called followers of the way.
Sure.
And so when Jesus says, I am the way and the truth, the other word that can be translated there for truth is reality. I am the way, I'm the reality, I'm the life. I actually think that we can all say this when we understand our core essence, because there's a way internally and he's saying, look, obviously if it's just Jesus, then we're screwed because he's not here. He lived 2,000 years ago and we can just idolize him and read about him and create shrines and all these things, which is really what by and large Christianity has done. But it's also, I always look at what does that produce though? What are the results of that? So most Christians will tell you, and I know I was a pastor, and I mean, Christians, they're all about, wanting to please God, and they all, confessing sins, and it's like sin management, and I failed here and I failed here. And somehow that makes God happy when we acknowledge that. And that's the life. It's a perpetual cycle of, I someday want to be like Jesus, not in this life, but when I shed this body and get to this new place, then I will be like Jesus. But I don't hear any of that in Jesus' teaching. It's, hey, be perfect. Because God's perfect. So oh, is that even possible? Well, of course. It's effortless. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. Okay. So how do I do this? Well, there's a new way to be. And it's really from being. So that's I think the essence of what I was trying to communicate in the book when I said, Jesus isn't the new guru to be worshiped. He's not looking for fans, but he's the embodiment of a new way that we can all be human.
Awesome, dude. Love it. Love it. Love it. So my friends, there you have it. Jamal Javanji, dropping bombs on manifesting your soul's purpose. Told you, man, fire's going to be coming from his mouth. If you guys want to learn more about him, please visit his website at Jamal Javanji, JIVANJEE.com. Also, make sure you head on over to Amazon, grab his newest book, Living for a Living. Go buy the book. I don't care if you get the soft cover or the Kindle. Go buy the man's book. It's a solid
and it's
read.
Also available on Audible as well. So it's
brilliant. So if you want to listen to it, bam. I'll tell you, it's full of wonderful insights and wisdom that really help you manifest your soul's deepest purpose. And dude, I believe you have some course coming out all about money and healing. So what's all that about, and where can people go to find that information too?
Yeah, I'm really excited for 2020 because I think a lot of us have been affected by poverty. And again, the misconception is I'm not poor. I don't have I'm not been affected by poverty because I have money in the bank. You could have lots of money in the bank.
Yeah.
Or you could have no money in the bank. It doesn't matter. Poverty is a sense. It's internal. And if money isn't a source of, way I look at it is, if money isn't a source of joy for you, and if money doesn't bring you into the present. And so what I mean by that, it can be it's not sourced externally, but when you see money, it doesn't make you feel like, yes, it's good. My present is good. My future is good. Then we've been affected by poverty in some way, shape, or form. And when you've been affected by poverty, you will repeat these cycles, cycles of feeling limited. So I'm really excited about helping people come out of the effects of poverty. And usually there's two ways to that: unconscious beliefs and conscious beliefs about money. And so I'm developing a course in the new year that will help us identify conscious and then also unconscious beliefs about money. And when we become aware of that, then we can set new intentions around those things and actually change our relationship that we have with money. So that's coming up in the new year. If a person wants to find out more information about that, if you go to my website, JamalJavanji.com, you just scroll to the bottom of the website, you put your email address in there, hit submit, you'll get on my mailing list and you'll hear more information about that course.
Awesome. And lastly, he has a great podcast called The Lovecast. So if you're digging Jamal, digging his vibe, go subscribe to his podcast, The Lovecast. Jamal, dude, thank you so much for dropping your truth, your wisdom. Thank you for carving out time out of your life and being here. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much. I've heard so many great things about you, and I'm so excited about your podcast, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I, love this concept. I love these deep conversations, and I hope this type of content is really serving you. Now, I would love to know if it is. Please make sure that you hit me up on Instagram to let me know your thoughts about this episode. I am always trying to make this podcast better for you. I know this is the Anthony John Amyx podcast, but dude, this isn't about me. I created this podcast because I wanted a format to talk about some of these things. I talk to my clients, I talk to my friends, I study this stuff all the time, and I just wanted a longer format to be able to talk about this. So please go follow me on Instagram. My handle is @AJAmyx, pretty simple. And just send me a direct message letting me know what you're liking about this show, or if you have any recommendations on ways to make it better. Just whatever's going on, let me know. I'll let you know, I'll respond. And yes, you will be talking with me. I don't outsource my Instagram or anything like that because I really like being plugged in to you, right? Into the audience. So I just feels like it helps me stay connected, So anyway, go follow me on Instagram @AJAmyx.com and shoot me a direct message. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you're having just an amazing day. And until next time, my friend, I'm out. Peace.
Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to ajamyx.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.